18.
Hello and welcome to Big Deal. I'm Nisha Poddar. Now, Bearing Private Equity Asia has invested close to about $8 billion in India. And on Big Deal today, I'm joined by Sean Salata, who heads the private equity firm. Welcome to CNBC TV18, Sean. In fact, your firm has about $140 billion worth of assets under management across the globe. Let's begin with your view on the global macro factors like central bank actions, economic slowdown worries. How do you see investment climate really develop amidst all this?
Yeah, hi, Nisha. Thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here. I think if you look at the global macro situation, the best way to describe it is that it has been improving substantially since the beginning of the year. At the beginning of the year, we were expecting sticky inflation, and we had inflation at 6.5% in the U.S. That's now down to 3%. At the beginning of the year, we weren't sure what was going to happen with unemployment, whether it was going to shoot up as a result of bank interest rates going up. What's happened is that unemployment essentially stayed flat all year. It's about 3.5% in the United States. It's still 3.5% today. And so across the board, we're seeing quite a bit of resilience. If you look at the GDP estimates at the beginning of the year for the U.S. economy, it was 0.3% or thereabouts. That's now been revised upwards to close to 2%, 1.8% or thereabouts. So you're seeing a revision of the whole macro backdrop, much more favorable and more conducive. And as a result, public stock markets in the U.S. are near all-time highs. The credit markets are more open. And we think this is actually a pretty interesting time to be investing generally in private equity in Asia and in India specifically. We see it as a really interesting time right now, probably one of the most interesting periods, most attractive times for investments in private equity in India that we've ever seen.
Wow, that is really a very, positive commentary coming in from you, who has spent or has invested close to $8 billion. So, Sean, what are the factors which is really driving your attraction towards India as one of the best destinations or best-in-time destinations right now for investment? And will that also reflect in the amount that you dole out in this country?
Well, in addition to investing about $8 billion, I should add that we've realized and distributed close to over $6 billion, actually, of realizations of profitable investments already from India. So it is a market that's very proven through our investment program and that we feel more and more confident in as we see things progressing. We've been investing in India since the early mid-1990s, so going on 25 years. And the structural changes that we've seen in terms of the digital stack, in terms of the bankruptcy code, in terms of what's happening with the whole demographics in the economy and the growth in middle class spending power, and many of the government policies that are encouraging more investment, all of these structural changes are now starting to come to fruition. GST, for example, and a lot of these things are just creating a sort of a virtuous cycle that's driving growth in the economy, that's driving consumer spending. And with consumer spending comes aspirational demand for things like healthcare, which is an area that we're very positive. We recently made a few investments in healthcare sector. And so we just continue to believe that it's an economy, it's a country that's very much ripe for continued growth and development. And at the moment, it's our largest single allocation out of our Asian investment program is to Indian investments. And we plan to make more investments than we've announced already this year.
Any estimate on how much more on that, Sean?
Well, I was in Delhi a few months ago, and I made a statement that I think we can invest $5 billion over the next 3 years. That was 2-3 months ago before we announced the last couple of investments. So I think that number is very much achievable now. We've probably committed to $2 billion out of the $5 billion that we said we were looking to deploy in just the first 6 months of that window. So I think that sort of investment amount is very doable, and we continue to have very strong deal flow, and we continue to look at investments in the key thematic areas that we're interested in, healthcare, IT, as well as financial services, and now increasingly also the manufacturing sector.
Right. What is it in manufacturing that you like, Sean?
I think that's a less proven sector and one that we're just starting to understand and develop more conviction about. But it is benefiting from the geopolitical winds that are blowing and favorably in the direction of moving more manufacturing to India from places like China. It is actually in line with government policy, the Make in India policy. You know, we're seeing government support for domestically produced products, both protectionist measures as well as some of the incentivization that's being put in place to support, from a tax standpoint, to support exports from India. So we're just starting to understand the industry and look at it more closely. I'd say it's more preliminary and more early stage than the other areas that we've been looking at for many years, like IT, healthcare, and financial services.
That's right. These three sectors are sector of choice for most of the private equity firms, along with some consumption-based sectors. Now, manufacturing really needs a lot of investments in India, and that coming in from private equity can really give a big boost. While you are still at a nascent stage in understanding this, but have you identified, because manufacturing is a very large basket, so what kind of manufacturing, if you can throw more light on that, Sean?
I think it's hard for me to describe it in too much narrow detail at this point. We're looking at quite broadly across the sectors. We're looking at more of the higher value added segments of the economy. We're looking clearly at the ones that are more engaged in global supply chains and that are exporting in areas that will continue to drive demand. So I don't have any specific areas that I can comment on at this time.
That's right. And India is also putting a lot of thrust behind Make in India and manufacturing in India. Now, Sean, two big investments you've made and big acquisitions also. One was Indira IVF. You want to take us through the rationale that you see in this particular space and also the overall healthcare. How do you view investments over there?
Well, Indira is a fantastic business, and you know, it's very aligned with our whole purpose-driven approach to investing as well, being financial investors, but also purpose-driven and trying to have a positive impact everywhere that we invest. 125,000 families have had successful pregnancies as a result of the efforts of the Indira IVF business over the years. So really having a positive impact on society. It's a market-leading business. It's probably 3 times the size of its nearest competitors. It has 115 clinics across the country. There's an opportunity, we believe, to expand the footprint even further. It's a business that is highly regarded in terms of its technology, the way it's adopting. There's even been some recent reports about how it's adopting AI in having higher success rates in selecting the various eggs that are used in the IVF process. And so we just think that there's a lot of opportunity for growth, and the company's exhibited tremendous growth historically. We think that growth can continue with further investment from us, and that's really the plan. Healthcare generally, I was in Hyderabad last week, and I was just amazed. I was visiting AIG Hospitals, which is one of the companies that we've invested in, and Dr. Reddy and the team there have done an amazing job in building a world-class healthcare and research facility. And I was just amazed to see the demand, the number of people coming in every day for outpatient procedures, and just the volume of demand and the quality of healthcare that's being provided.
Right.
And it just was very clear to me how important this is to the aspiring middle-class new consumers in India who want healthcare for their families, for their parents, for their children, for their loved ones. So I think it's tremendous opportunity for investors, and it's just great to see these developments taking place.
That's right. Healthcare awareness as well as also the insurance penetration is giving a lot of lift to especially the hospital space and other healthcare pockets. But Sean, there are very few pharma companies available, and there is one such opportunity also available. Do you think that a pure play pharma investment is something that is in line with your strategy in India?
Yes, pharma is definitely part of our strategy. We've been looking at many of the different opportunities in the sector. We haven't found one yet, but we're working on a number of them at the moment. I do think there will be opportunities there. It's another sector where India has a world-class competitive capability, like in IT services. And it's in line with our strategy, so we'll continue to look there.
You spoke about the facility of Dr. Reddy's, but Cipla is also something that we have here reported that the promoters would like to offload some stake in. So those are the kind of opportunities that Barings may want to look into, Sean?
I can't comment on any publicly traded companies or anything like that, but I can tell you that we are looking quite broadly at healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and continue to work actively on new investment ideas. All
right. On that note, Sean, we'll slip into a very short breather on the show. We'll come back and continue the conversation with Baring Asia. Stay tuned.
इन्वेस्टमेंट की रेगुलर इंफॉर्मेशन मिलती है क्या?
बिल्कुल। पूछ।
विड्रॉ करने के बाद पैसे कितने टाइम में मिलते हैं?
सुन सवाल चंद, म्यूचुअल फंड सही है .com पर लॉग इन कर, वहां तेरे सारे सवालों के जवाब मिल जाएंगे, समझा?
कौन सी वेबसाइट?
म्यूचुअल फंड सही है .com।
सही है।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
टिप चाहिए? पैसा लगाना है तो सेंचुरी प्लाई क्लब प्राइम पे लगाओ। डूबेगा नहीं, जलेगा भी नहीं, कोई खा नहीं जाएगा और मिनिमम 30 साल का रिटर्न देगा। अब इससे बेटर इन्वेस्टमेंट है तो बताओ? सेंचुरी प्लाई क्लब प्राइम, रहो बेफिक्र।
न्यू कार, वाह! इंश्योरेंस लिया?
Of course.
एको तजुर्बा कहता है कि जहां से गाड़ी लो,
इंश्योरेंस भी वहीं से लो। एको पे है 0 कमीशन, फुल बेनिफिट्स एंड लो प्रीमियम।
अरे क्या 200-300 रुपए बचाने के लिए?
पर तजुर्बा तो कहता है कि
कौन तजुर्बा? कार इंश्योरेंस हो लेना तो एको चेक कर लेना।
When timeless European design meets cutting-edge technology, it's QO. QO, European Bath Lounges.
यही मौका है बिजनेस को बढ़ाने का, पर पैसा।
अपनी सुपर पावर यूज करने का टाइम आ गया है।
अब टेंशन मत लीजिए, IIFL फाइनेंस से झटपट गोल्ड लोन लीजिए और बिजनेस आगे बढ़ाइए।
आपके जैसे सुपर हीरोज ऐसी छोटी मोटी प्रॉब्लम से थोड़ी ना रुकते हैं, इसीलिए लाइफ जब भी आगे बढ़ने का मौका दे तो अपनी सुपर पावर, अपना गोल्ड यूज करिए और IIFL फाइनेंस से गोल्ड लोन लीजिए। IIFL फाइनेंस करता है सीधी बात।
मैं चाहना कि खिडारी ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਖੇਡ ਰਹੇ ਹੋਣ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਘਰ ਦੀ ਚਿੰਤਾ ਨਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਦੀ ਆਰਥਿਕਤਾ ਦੀ ਚਿੰਤਾ ਨਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਵਧੀਆ ਖੇਡਣਗੇ।
ਬਾਕਸਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਆਧਾਰ ਤੇ ਮੇਰੀ ਬੇਟੀ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਬਦਲ ਕੇ ਰੱਖਤੀ।
ਨਵੀਂ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਆਸ ਆ, ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਵਤਨ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਗੇਮਾਂ ਕਰਾਈਆਂ, ਸਾਡੇ ਹੀ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਮੈਡਲ ਆਏ ਆ, ਕਾਫੀ 11 골ਡ ਆਏ ਸਾਡੇ ਜੀ। ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਜੀ ਵੀ ਸਪੋਰਟਸ 'ਚ ਵਧੀਆ ਰੁਚੀ ਰੱਖਦੇ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਖੁਦ ਵੀ ਵਾਲੀਬਾਲ ਦੇ ਪਲੇਅਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। ਸਾਨੂੰ ਆਸ ਆ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਪਲੇਅਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਉਹ ਸਥਿਤੀ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਆ ਵੀ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਇੱਕ ਨੋਰਮਲ ਘਰ 'ਚੋਂ ਉੱਠ ਕੇ ਬੰਦਾ ਗੇਮ 'ਚ ਆਉਂਦਾ, ਗਰੋ ਕਰਦਾ।
Welcome back. You're watching Big Deal and we are in conversation with Sean Salata, who heads Baring Asia. So Sean, we were discussing various sectors. Healthcare is something that your firm is very bullish on. Now, financial services, that's another very important area where, Baring Asia has been seen aggressively bidding and even engaging in a fighting war with other bidders for some of the assets here. You have presence in a bank, you have presence in other forms of financial services, and HDFC Credila was your latest investment. How do you see this particular space, and which pocket of financial services attracts you most right now?
Yes, well, financial services as a category is interesting because if you look at the overall growth in the sector, it's something like 20% annual growth in credit disbursements, sanctions in India overall. So it's really a macro play on the overall growth of the economy, of businesses, and the demand for credit. We've also seen improvements in the credit outlook and in the bankruptcy code, and also just generally in the balance sheets of the banks and the entire financial system. I think that looking at the NBFC segment in particular, something like the HDFC Credila investment, that was really a very unique opportunity to buy a blue chip asset from probably the bluest of blue chip vendors in India, being the HDFC Group, which was due to regulatory reasons in a position where they were looking to dispose of an asset that normally wouldn't become available to a foreign investor in a full control position like that. So we thought it was a unique opportunity from a really high quality promoter owner of the asset in a subsector that's a very niche subsegment of the market, which is education loans. So the company provides loans to students that are going abroad for their education. That's their market strategy, and that's where they're strongest. And that segment of the market is really booming as more and more Indians want to go overseas to get their education and are financing that education. So we're really helping so many students achieve their dream of getting a foreign degree and doing it in a way that's very much suited to that category, those cohorts of borrowers that are looking for specific services like that. So we just feel that that company has tremendous growth opportunities ahead of it. And I think generally, one of the things I would say about private equity investing at the moment, not just in India, but globally, and particularly in India, because given the positive backdrop, is that it is a very competitive landscape. And so there is a lot of interest in these assets and in these businesses. And I think for us, we really focus on what we can do with the business after we buy the business. And so we're buyout investors, we buy controlling stakes in businesses. We then work with the management teams and the founders of those businesses to continue to grow the businesses and to expand those businesses even further. Because that's really how we're making our returns, is through growth, through further growth. It's not by buying them cheaply or buying them, at a discount. That's really difficult to do. And that's not our strategy. Our strategy really is to buy at market price at fair value, but then really invest in the businesses and transform those businesses through digitalization, through greater market penetration, whatever the strategy is, to help those companies achieve their full potential.
That's right. You have been a buyout investor and in almost all the sectors. So is that trend really going to continue, Sean? And you did mention manufacturing, but other sectors, if I have to ask you to pick amongst tech, financial services or healthcare, which one will you, put your bet more on?
Well, I think the buyout strategy is definitely very, very interesting. And, in the US and in Europe, buyout strategies, it's a mature business. It's a mature industry that's very well trodden. In India, it's a relatively new approach to investing.
Yes.
And it's really, I think, building momentum because it's sort of a historical time now where, so if you look back into the mid-90s when India really opened up and there was a lot of entrepreneurial activity, take the tech services, the IT services industry, that really started with the Y2K industry. I don't know if many of your viewers would even know what that means, but it was around the year 2000 when there was all this work being done as an outsourcing product service business for Y2K. And so a lot of companies were founded then. And as we get 25, 30 years into it now, a lot of the founders who were in their 30s then are now in their 60s. And so you have this kind of natural succession that's happening in many of these companies, and growth is probably slowing as well to some extent. And as that industry matures and founders become, getting to the age of retirement, some of them will continue to pass on the business to their family members or to others, but many of them are looking for a succession plan. And so I think there is an increasing amount of buyout activity that's happening and consolidation that's happening in the sector, and that's going to continue. Same thing with other areas like healthcare, financial services. Many of these companies are at the point where the founders are now nearing the age where they're looking for succession planning and thinking about what they do next. And so that's where private equity can be part of the solution, and really continuing to grow the business and put it into a new ownership structure where the employees and other stakeholders can continue to thrive as part of a business that's now under new ownership. And so that's very much part of our strategy, and that is the main part of our strategy. And we think that there's a lot of opportunities to continue to do that.
Lots of opportunities there, but one investment that you made, that's in RBL Bank. Of course, you're not allowed to go above 10% stake. What is your strategy going to be in that? Because there is a lot of action when it comes to the equity play at RBL Bank.
Yeah, well, again, as a public company, I won't make any comments about it that are not public information. But what I would just say is that was a specific opportunity that we had to invest at a time when the bank was looking to raise more capital. We felt it was a good investment, good value. It was sort of around the COVID period, as I recall. So there was a lot of uncertainty in the market, and we kind of came in and helped the bank improve its balance sheet and really bolster its financial position. And it's a play, as I said earlier, a macro play on the entire growth of the credit sector in India, which we continue to view positively, growing at around 20% overall. And this is a very well-managed bank with a great CEO, and we think it will continue to participate in the growth of the sector.
In the sector, and you continue to be also optimistic about RBL Bank going forward as well, to hold on to your position.
We're very optimistic about RBL Bank. I think they just recently announced their results and were very positively received, and the bank is performing well.
That's right. And on the other hand, when we talk about the tech sector, Sean, this has gone through a huge amount of change. The IT services are giving mixed kind of guidance. Some of them are not being able to cope with the present market scenario. While the digital boys, the new ones, are also giving huge amount of competition, and on the other hand they have seen their own boom and bust cycle already. How do you view the technology space, and which are the pockets which you think are still attractive for investment here?
Well, if you look at the IT services industry, which India is uniquely positioned in, given its large talent pool that it has for the global STEM talent base that it has, a science, technology, engineering pool that it has, it has gone through various stages of evolution. When it started in the 1990s, as I said, it was very much an outsourcing business of just low-end support work for applications development and support, and Y2K type of outsourcing. We then had a massive boost in demand that came with the cloud and the move to digital. And that kind of adoption drove the growth over the last, say, 15 years that was really accelerating as we moved to software as a service, as we moved to digital-first business models around the world. Huge spend and huge demand for the kinds of services that many of the Indian IT services companies can provide. Then now we're entering a new phase, which is, I believe, will be driven by AI. And many people are looking at this as well. And on the one hand, there are threats posed by AI, which is potentially a deflationary force that will increase automation and reduce demand for outsourcing. But on the other hand, there's many, many more opportunities, we believe, for companies to adopt AI into their existing estate of applications that they own. And how do you incorporate AI into those, and how do you integrate it? And that's a job that Indian tech services companies are very well placed to deliver on. And that's a multi-year, that's a sort of decade-long runway probably of spend. If you talk to global companies now, what are they spending on in technology? It's things like AI. And they're continuing to spend on traditional tech spend in areas like cloud and digital-first business, user interface and so on. So I think, yes, if your time frame is what's going to happen over the next 3 to 6 months, I don't know. And I think there could be a bit of a slowdown as the global macro picture is still a little unclear. But if your time frame is 5 years or 10 years, I believe very strongly that there will continue to be significant spend on the tech services type solutions that Indian companies can provide. And so we're very, very bullish on tech services sector and continue to invest heavily in that sector. And we'll continue to look for new investment opportunities there.
All right, Sean. That was a lot of deep dive and perspective into various sectors of choice for BPEA Asia to really invest in India. Thanks so much for all your views and thanks for joining us right here on CNBC TV18. So that was the take coming in from Sean Salata of BPEA Asia on their future investments. They're extremely positive and even looking at new areas like manufacturing for their future investments in the country besides the already existing sectors. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Big Deal. Thanks so much for tuning in.